I am Kasie Rodriguez. I am an IFBB Bikini Pro. I turned pro in 2022 at the North American Championships. And I am 36 years old. I am married to my husband, Kasie Rodriguez. We've been together for almost 18 years, and we have two wonderful children. They're teenagers. I have Jalen, who is currently 17 and will be 18 this year and graduating high school. And then I have my son, Jaden, who is 15, going to be 16 this year, and he is a sophomore.
For you, I mean, kind of going back in time a little bit, how'd you actually get into the sport and get introduced to it?
I have been in the fitness industry for many years, a little over 15 years to be exact. I started out as a group exercise instructor, teaching cardio kickboxing classes and just all different variations of group exercise classes. And then I tapped into personal training and then management as assistant manager, and working in through the gyms. You have quite a few bodybuilders, so just seeing them go through preps, co-workers go through preps. I had been following the bodybuilding industry since a young age, and I was like, that's something I want to do. It was like on my bucket list of like, that's what I want to do it one of these days. um so I want to say I got to that point. It was one, as I'm not sure how familiar you are with the bodybuilding, like the commitment of it, but it's just a lot of commitment when it comes to time at the gym, training, cardio, nutrition, the expenses. And so it just, my kids were young at that time when I was working in the gym, and I had to wait till they were at a point in time in their life that they were a little more independent. That way I could spend the hours that I needed to at the gym to you know become a professional bodybuilder. So once they got to that point, I want to say my daughter was like 13 when she got to that age where she could stay home by herself for an hour unsupervised. And then that was when I decided to, compete. And then I tell people usually if you do a bodybuilding show and you absolutely love it, or you do a bodybuilding show and you'll never do another one again. It's usually one or the other. And I did one bodybuilding show and I was addicted. I had been bitten by the bug and I was like, let's go. When's the next one? So I just fell in love with the process and the journey. And so here I am. It's over 5 years and 21 bodybuilding shows later.
So some pretty good experience and obviously some pretty good accomplishments along the way. When you got started into it, or I guess even maybe before, did you have that like, as you mentioned it there that you wanted to do it, and it sounds like you wanted to like do it well and do it right when you did decide to do it, because I guess it is that commitment, time, money, all that kind of stuff. But did you go into it thinking, I want to do this so I can become a pro one day and because I want to achieve these things? Or like when you first went into it, and like I said, maybe even a little bit before you got into it, was your mindset around like how can I succeed and be, I think everybody, goes into win, but like how can I achieve pro level, or how can I achieve, winning shows? Or was it like, let me just get into it and see what it's like and then go from there?
Yeah, the very first show, bodybuilding show, was definitely just like, let's do it and see where it goes from there. And it happened to be my very first show was the San Diego Championships on March 30th in 2019. And it was also a bikini pro show. It was in conjunction. A lot of these amateur shows are in conjunction with a pro show, and it happened to be a bikini pro show. And the amateurs were roomed in one room, and then they had a pro room, like that you could enter. And so the pros would walk by, and I just standing next to them, or having them walk by me, I was like, I think that's achievable, like I can do that. So and then placing so well at my first show, and getting nationally qualified, my very first amateur show, that was, I was like, okay, let's do it. Maybe I do have what it takes to, be a professional bikini competitor. But did I know really going into that first show what even a bikini pro was? Not so much. I mean, like I said, I had been following the bodybuilding industry, but I really didn't know what all of it entailed until I actually did that first show. And then I was like, oh. And then, the next level was national. And then that was very eye-opening experience. The level, what you compete at an amateur level versus a national level is totally two different levels of commitment and physiques that you're up against. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience. And after my first national show, I was like, okay, like it was a little humbling. And then I was like, okay, let's get to work so that I can achieve this.
Mm-hmm. So when you said that you saw kind of the pros going past, you're like, that's achievable, and maybe I can get there. I think I can. Was that more out of confidence and like in yourself, or was it more out of looking back at it, like being naive and thinking like not knowing fully what was involved, not knowing the time and commitment, like anything, like which one do you think it was more? Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today.
Probably a little bit of both. The thing was for me is because I was already, I want to say I was 31 when I did my first amateur show. So I had already been lifting for many years, already had the muscle maturity. So for me, it was more like fine tuning my physique. I already kind of had the muscle mass and density that I needed to be a pro. I actually had to pull back on some areas of my physique and decrease muscle in certain areas and then bring up certain areas to meet the bikini criteria. So I think that was why I thought, like, hey, this is achievable, because at certain areas of my physique was already pro level or needed to back off to achieve that pro level. So I think that was why. But then also some of it definitely was naive and was like, did not know what I was getting myself into at the time, because again, it took me 10 national shows to turn pro. So it wasn't overnight success by any means.
When you started to realize like what you had to do to get there, and you said you kind of had to back off in some places and obviously improve in other places, was it hard or weird for you at all to go from like training to improve like overall to start to train to improve only in certain areas and take it easier in certain areas?
Absolutely. I've always loved training legs and glutes, especially legs. And in 2020, I only trained legs 1 day a week for a whole year. So it definitely was challenging, because I've always enjoyed it since a young age. But I kind of have that do whatever it takes mentality. And I just, did whatever, I just followed the plan and did whatever coach said was necessary for me to achieve that. And I currently still have a lot of that, still in my protocol. There's a lot of areas that, especially once you get to the pro level, it's all about detail. And there's a lot of areas that I have to just maintain. And then there's a few areas that I still need to bring up. So even working with my current coach and personal trainer, even when they just reprogrammed my training, he asked me, he's like, oh, is there any exercises that you like feel like you must have in your training protocol? I said, Drew, I have not done certain exercises in years because of my, physique and development already. Like, I haven't done a back squat probably in 4 or 5 years. And it's because my quads are very overdeveloped for the bikini division. So I cannot do anything that trains quads. So I mean, at this point, I've just learned to accept, not training, doing certain exercises to achieve the goal that I'm wanting to achieve at this moment. And then once I've retired from the sport, then I can go back to enjoying, all those different exercises and workouts that I enjoyed, in the past. I'm currently not doing any, work training any muscle groups that I shouldn't be training. I'm literally only training the muscles that are, required of me to grow and progress in the sport. So my areas of focus are more with to my upper body, which is more lat development, and then upper glute. So that is my training protocol is completely focused on those two. So every time I go into the gym, I go into the gym with a mentality of, I need to improve. This is, this is the areas that I need to focus on. So I treat this like a job. This is my full-time job as a professional athlete. So I treat, going to the gym as I'm going to work every day and giving it 110%. My whole life and world revolves around being the best athlete that I can be. So every gym session is 110% as far as I'm concerned.
So even though, you said you had your experience lifting and training and stuff before you got into the sport, did you have any thoughts at all? Like, even though like, okay, obviously early 30s is not even physically at your peak for most people yet, but did you have any thoughts of like, oh man, I'm going up against people that are only now in maybe their early 20s, and so like, what do I have to do to in some ways like not fast track, because like you already had built up this physique, but maybe like, did it feel at all like, okay, I have a little bit less time than my competitors to get this right?
I think when it comes to competing at the professional level, when it comes to age, I feel like when you're as women from age 30 to 40, I feel like we're in our prime when it comes to competing, because we do have that muscle maturity and density that we need to be competitive. Where I have found it being an issue is being a mother and having two kids is the waistline for me. That is the number one feedback that I get from the judges is my waistline. That is one downside to being a pro athlete and a mother is you are going against pro athletes that do not have kids. And so they haven't had that, their skin stretched out. And so lost pelvic floor development and strength. So that's where I find that I struggle the most when it comes to competing is my waistline is where I have my downfall when it comes to my age.
Gotcha. And is that something that is pretty common amongst like all the divisions of, the women's divisions, that is?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Gotcha. So, getting into, you said you did 10 national shows, right?
Yes.
So getting into like not necessarily each one on a specific level, but like when you go from the first one to the second one, it's probably feels a little bit different than going from like the fourth to the fifth to the sixth. And then, I feel like maybe the more that you do, I think on a positive side, the more experience you gain, you're obviously probably continuing to improve and bring a better package to stage and things like that. But on a mental side, was it challenging to continue to step on the stage thinking like, okay, is this going to be the one? And then is this next one going to be the one? And did you ever feel yourself thinking like, okay, well, is it going to be my turn, or is there just a point to where I've kind of hit what I can do?
Yeah, each show was definitely a learning experience, and you just gather feedback from the judges and, get back home and get to work and execute, and bring that feedback to the next national stage. Also, each national stage, you don't always have this. You're not always, not always the same girls show up to each national stage. So you are being compared a lot of times to different athletes, which affects placing as well. And then
Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today.
I would say I never had a point where I felt like I had reached my full potential, so I knew, and even right now, like I feel like I still haven't reached my full potential, and that's why I continue to keep competing. Once I feel like I've, done everything I possibly can in my power, and I just can't improve anymore. Like I've maxed out this physique, and then maybe I'll hang up the heels. But I don't ever feel like there was ever a moment that I had reached that point during my national circuit days. I just felt like I was constantly improving from show to show, and I just knew I was just, although it is about timing, it wasn't when, but it wasn't if, but when, am I going to turn pro? I knew it was just going to be a matter of time. Because I was always the only show that I did not get top 5 or top 10 at a national show was my very first national show. I was always in that mix of top 5 to top 10. And so they tell you, like, if you're in that top 5, top 10, just keep going, because it's just a lot of times it's just a matter of who shows up that day. And then also it has to, as an athlete, depending on your travels, living on the West Coast, traveling to the East Coast, you can't always predict how your body's going to respond to travel. So that was a huge factor for me turning pro, was nailing the peak, nailing my peak traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, and trying to show up with the same physique that I left here in Arizona, and to whether it be Pittsburgh or Charleston, because a lot of times after 8-10 hours of traveling, you don't show up looking exactly the same that you left home. So it was just like trial and error, trial and error, trial and error.
Gotcha. And so after that first one, not getting the top 10 placement within, subsequent shows, you did continue to do better. Did you ever look back and think, like, from my second or third show or whatever it may be early on to when I did get that, when I did get the pro card, did you ever look back and like compare and think, I could have got it here. I could have got it on that second or third one. I could have got it on the fourth one or even the sixth or seventh. Like, did you ever look back and think, like, this could have happened then, just like based on this is what I won with. I probably could have also won with this other physique as well. And that, like you said, it goes back to who shows up. But like, did you ever think about that?
Yeah, there was 2 shows that I actually I was very close to turning pro at 2 other shows. I got second place, one of them being Junior USA's 2021. It was my first national show of the season. I got second place, and I got moved out at the last comparisons. So when we went back to get judges' feedback, I was like, "What? What did I do? Like, why did you move me out of the center stage?" And Sandy, like I told you, my most common feedback was, you dropped your core control on stage. And so that's why she moved me out, was core control. And the same, well, not the same thing. It was just a little bit, she wanted me just a little bit tighter. Masters Nationals 2022. I got second place. I missed my pro card by 1 spot there. And she's like, I just want you a snag bit tighter. And then 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, I turned pro. So, again, that's what I like stress to athletes, like, make sure you stay post show and get that feedback and execute on the feedback, because if you keep showing up to the next national show, and with those improvements that the judges are asking of you, they're going to reward you. And that's what happened to me in the year that I turned pro in 2022. I did 3 national shows. And with each one, my placing improved at each one, because I kept bringing the feedback that they asked of me.
Gotcha. And kind of going along that same timeline of those national shows, is it something that you like really started to really started to like optimize certain things, whether that be within your workout or your diet or whatever it may be, different aspects of the sport? Or do you feel like it was more of just the consistency and the time requirement?
Oh no, it was I definitely had to make some adjustments. The year that I turned pro, I actually was getting up at 2 a.m. Arizona time. And that was because Pittsburgh, which is where I was doing most of my national shows, was 3 hours ahead. And I did that so that when I woke up at 2 a.m. Arizona time, it was actually 5 a.m. Pittsburgh time. That way my body could adjust to the time zone difference. That way when I did get to Pittsburgh, that my food timing, my water, my digestion, everything was in sync with the same schedule that I had here in Arizona. That's what I was also like mentioning earlier, is that it was important for me to with traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast to nail that consistency of whatever I was looking like here at home in Arizona. I needed to match that look in Pittsburgh. And how I did that was changing up my schedule here to match the East Coast schedule. That way, when I did get there, I could just continue my normal schedule that I was doing at home. And that way everything stayed the same, because when you're not eating at the same, if you're used to eating, 3 hours apart and, drinking water at certain times and going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, your body, gets used to those routines and habits. And when you do not follow those routines and habits, it does affect your physique. And that was what was happening to me. And I told myself in 2022, I had learned this from traveling 2020, 2021, that this is the issue that I was having every time I would show up at a show on the other coast. And so I was like, I'm going to try this and see if it works. And sure enough, with consistency, it did, lead to my pro card win.
Is that a pretty common thing to try to do, like with time changes?
I've heard some athletes, discuss that they have done that, and so that's why I did try it, because I have heard other athletes have the same issue. So I was like, I was desperate. I was like, whatever. Again, I have that whatever it takes mentality. So I was like, I'll do whatever it takes. So if that means get up 2 a.m., then get up at 2 a.m. And so I gave it a try, and it definitely, when I got to Pittsburgh, it just, everything seemed to flow. I was able to go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, eat at the same time. And then my physique ended up following, suit. And so that, again, did lead to my pro card win.
How long was the 2 a.m. thing?
I started it in May of 2022, and my first show of the season wasn't until universe, I want to say, was July. And then I had Masters Nationals in August, and then turned pro in September of 2022. And then I ended up keeping that schedule. It was really hard for me to break that. So when I did my two pro shows, my pro debut and then my second pro show in 2022 after I turned pro, it was really hard for me to break that schedule. So I ended up continuing that schedule to finish my season, even though my next two shows were a little bit closer and not in the same time zone. And then I was able to, once I ended my season and went into improvement season, I was able to slowly get myself back into a normal routine again and schedule. But yeah, no, I kept it from May of 2022 all the way. I didn't do my last show till November 5th of 2022. So May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 7 months of waking up at 2 a.m. and going to bed at 7. My husband was not a happy camper, let's just say that. And my kids were not either, because, I was waking up before the rest of the house and making noise, making my coffee and breakfast. And then I'd go to bed at 7 and everyone's still awake and was in the kitchen, making, snacks. And so it was definitely a very difficult time, as a family with this crazy schedule. But I'm like, guys, please, like, hang in here with me. We're almost there. again, all the sacrifices ended up paying off with, and not only did I win my pro card, I won 2 pro cards. So, and I won the overall. So it did win, it did, my hard work and sacrifice did pay off in the end.
Did you see any impacts or effects on anything with just like whether it be within bodybuilding as far as your workouts go, or um maybe like timing your meals was a little harder just because of different factors, or maybe even just like your other, outside of bodybuilding stuff, like how did, and maybe even more like when you first started doing it, like how did that go getting used to that?
Well, I started it in May, and then my kids, start summer break at usually the first week of June. So I did it at a time where it was like kind of perfect because the kids had 2 months off for summer break. So I was able to do it without interfering with their like school schedule and sports schedule. And then by the time that they did start school in August, everybody was so used to mom's routine that we just were able to, continue with it throughout the rest of the season. But it's all about time, like planning, timing. I plan and time. When every year I always pick out my shows in January at the very beginning of the year and plan out my entire season. I'm a huge planner, and I think that's a huge part of my success is because I do plan and into detail with everything that I do. And I feel like that's important to be that organized and meticulous when you're in this industry if you want to be successful, because every little detail matters and all the planning matters. So if you it's really hard to just wing it in this sport. Like you really gotta, it's gotta be very methodical.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to like changing up your schedule like that so much, because it's not just your schedule, it's like the rest of the world almost operates on this certain schedule, and you're sleeping during a pretty good percentage of when the rest of the world is awake. So it almost seems like you would have to be even more efficient with like those interactions and stuff you have to get done and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, it's and that's why probably also why people bodybuilders say it is a very isolating sport, because when you are in a prep and you're focused on your training, your cardio, your nutrition, um, you really have to limit, how much other time, we don't really have a lot of other time of the day to do anything else but that. So in that little bit of time that you do have, you need to focus on your immediate family. So a lot of times when I'm in prep, I'm so like focused that I really don't communicate with a lot of my family, a lot of friends, and they know. And I mean, when I'm in improvement season, then I do try to make sure I, talk to my family, once a week. I try to have coffee dates and lunch dates with friends. I do try to, when I am not in a prep season, and I'm in an improvement season, is to value those relationships and put them first, because when we are in a prep, we do have to put them on the back burner because prep does take priority over all of those other, all those other activities. So, yeah, because you are limited. I mean, and when you aren't training cardio, nutrition, then we're also focused on posing and stretching and body work. So it's a full-time job, just in itself. And then if you're a wife and a mother, then you've got 2 or 3 other full-time jobs. And to tell you the truth, I don't know how people, I mean, I coach, so it allows me to have a flexible schedule, but for the athletes that have full-time jobs on top of being a professional bodybuilder, I don't know how they do it. I really don't, because I'm like, I can barely like stay afloat with what I've got on my plate. So I can't imagine adding a full-time job to this lifestyle.
Yeah. It is it's very inspiring, regardless of what else you do have going on in your personal life and career. And family, and then you add on bodybuilding to that. It's really cool because I think there's so many people who give the excuse of I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that, when it should be a necessity, or it should be, seen as this necessity of just adding in a little exercise or movement into your life, or figuring out a way to, eat healthier. And then, you have these people who are doing it all, it seems like, and then they still not just have time to add in a little a little workout here and then, or eat a little healthier. It's like they're going to the extreme of the bodybuilding side of it, and they do everything that everybody else, if not more, is doing. So it's really inspiring to get to talk to people like that. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
Yeah, I tell people, I'm like, I run circles around you guys. Just all these people that tell me that they with excuses, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, there could be, there's so many excuses people could give, and there's so many excuses I could give, but I'm just not one of those people. I always try to find the positive and find I always try to find a way. And again, I do have that do whatever it takes mentality. So if it requires me to wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning, I will do it. I have to go to bed at 7. That was the one thing about going to bed at 7 p.m. at night is the sun. That's what probably bothered me the most was the
Especially,
sun.
yeah, like during the early summer when the sun is still up at that time.
Yes. Yeah. Because remember, I started it in May. So I had all those summer hours with the sun out so late. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so hard I would like put those little what's it called? The sleeping things over my eyes to try to like block out the sun out of my eyes, because it was really hard. That was probably one of the hardest parts, but you do get used to it after a while.
That's funny. And then it's also funny what the body will get used to and what we can get used to when we do like a routine. Just sticking with it for a certain amount of time, as crazy as it may seem at the beginning, it just becomes normal after a certain amount of time. And I think that it's kind of a on a broader scale, that doing that one kind of like seemingly crazy thing is really what bodybuilding is in a nutshell. Like it's just doing a bunch of like what other people would consider crazy things. You're adding them all together, a really strict diet, really strict going to the gym and getting your lifting and cardio, really, taking care of your body, like I said, with the body work. Like if you take any one of those and add it into someone's routine, it would be as crazy as you doing the 7 to 2 kind of thing. But then you add that just onto all the other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Because I mean, people think just because you turn pro means your whole life is my life did not really change much. Like just because you're a professional athlete doesn't mean your life is gonna change. It really doesn't. You still have to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. The only thing is now you just have a title to it. And to tell you the truth, it's starting all over again. When you turn pro, you're back at the bottom of the totem pole. Now it's like, okay, now you have to work your way back up. When you're amateur, you work your way up and in placing and as amateur, then at the national level. And a lot of times you're used to winning or getting that top 5, and then when you turn pro, like you got to get used to losing again. You lose way more than you win as a pro. So it's really being a pro, really nothing has really changed much when it comes to my daily lifestyle, other than I just have a title next to my name. And I go against, even better athletes. You're going against the world.
Yeah, you're going against athletes who, in some cases, not certainly not all cases, but you're going against athletes, especially when you initially get into the sport and you're young in it and things like that, and you haven't got, established yourself as like a threat or anything like that, or a predominant player. Like you're going up against these athletes who may like bodybuilding might be one of the only things that they do. They may not have a family. Maybe they're getting a lot of their stuff taken care of for them, or, certain, maybe it's supplements or whatever, different aspects of it taken care of for them. Like it's interesting because there is that like disparity between, at the pro level, probably even more than the amateur level, like the top and the bottom, And it's really cool to see kind of when like a new person will break through, like, oh, they're going and, winning a show now. And it's kind of that, like that cyclical thing of like getting into it, earning your stripes, if you will, taking your time into it. And then like that new class of competitors will come up and replace the older ones that are coming out. And then the cycle kind of continues.
Yeah, it really is. You're really just being consistent and just getting better at the consistency. It's you learn constantly and get better each year. And it's always evolving. That's one thing I love about this sport. It's always evolving and changing. So, what was required of us in previous years, isn't always required of us, in the current year. So that's one thing I love about the sport is that it's constantly evolving and changing, and you have to evolve and change with it. And so it always gives you something to work for and as an athlete to
Mm-hmm.
become better and better.
Right. So when you did get your pro card and you said you did those two shows post getting that card that same season, was that kind of in the plans of like, if we do get it, then we're going to these two, or was it like, okay, we got it, now let's just see if we can maybe take advantage and get a little experience as a pro?
Oh no, I told you I plan out my whole season in the beginning of the in January. So I had already planned out if I turn for every national show that I had planned is like if I turn pro at this show, then I'm going to go do this pro show. So I had like a pro show planned after every national show. And so I knew if I turned pro at North American Championships, I was going to do the San Antonio Classic. So as soon as I turned pro, again, it could have I could have changed my mind depending on the judges' feedback. Of course, their feedback takes priority of whatever I have planned to do. So if Sandy would have said, "Hey, Kasie, like you need to go into improvement season and grow to be competitive," I would have gone into an improvement season. But she was, you looked absolutely amazing, and I would like you to get on the next, pro stage to be compared to the other bikini pro athletes to give you feedback because she's like, I had won the overall, the Masters 35 overall at my pro at when I won my pro card. So she's like, you were perfection on that day. Like no one could beat you that day. So that's why she was like, it's hard to give you feedback because you were the best with what was stepping on stage with you today. I need you to step on a pro stage to give you accurate feedback on what improvements to make. So that's what I did. I, did the next, and that's the thing. San Antonio Classic was the next pro bikini show, and it also was Sandy's show. So the judge that gave me that rewarded me of my pro card was also the head judge at that pro show. So it was nice to get in front of her again as a pro and get that feedback from her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was it like going to that? Kind of walk us through what that experience was like at that first pro show and, obviously, leading up to stepping on stage and being back there and seeing all the competitors and just, what the new competition is going to be and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously stepping on stage and then that post show.
It was a relief because I finally had, I would say, and majority of us bikini pro athletes will tell you that because there's so much pressure at that national level, especially when you're, did as many national shows as I did, like that pressure to like turn pro, especially because I was so close so many times, like fifth and third and second, eighth and fifth and third and second, like so close in that top five that everyone's like, you're so close, keep going. You're so close, keep going. So there's a lot of pressure, to turn pro. So it was like once I turned pro, like going into that pro debut, I had no expectation whatsoever. It was like, I can just enjoy the experience and then get feedback and then we'll, go from there. So it was probably the least stressed I ever was going into a show because I just didn't have any really expectation for myself going into that show other than, just showing up my best self.
Mhm. And what did you learn about yourself and learn about kind of the pro stage and what the kind of differences are and what it's going to take to, be there and compete there?
Posing. Posing. That's really, I would say that's what, I mean, of course, muscle density separates a lot of us pro athletes, but posing, it really does come down to your presentation. And that's something that I've really struggled with throughout my entire bodybuilding career is the presentation portion of it. I'm just not a very dancey, flowy person. So it's just everything I ever did growing up when it came to sports, running track, cross country, cheerleading. I taught cardio kickboxing for 10 years. Everything was very stiff movements. So trying to be like natural and flowy on stage is just not me whatsoever. So it's been very difficult for me to like retrain myself to not be so stiff and be more relaxed and just flow on stage. And unfortunately, I'm still working with that to this day. But I do continue to improve each year. But other than that, I mean, everybody that turns pro is worthy of that pro, card and that pro status. So we all look amazing on stage. It really just comes down to presentation and then just there's a little bit of density difference.
And I think that's amazing that the judges do what they do and seeing those differences and not just doing that, but like how quickly they do it.
Yeah, they do know, once you're at the pro level, they do know you and know you by name. That's one thing I do like about the different. That's one difference that I do notice from amateur to pro is that they do know each of us individually, and they usually call us out by name and versus number when you're a pro. So I feel like that does help that they're very knowledgeable and when it comes to who their athletes are on stage and how they typically look. And so I'm sure that helps as well. But they also have trained eyes, so they see exactly, those things that they're looking for pop out at them right away. So it's very easy for them, to make those decisions on the fly just because they're so experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. It is amazing just talking to a few judges on the podcast about kind of the training they go through and then, the decision to continue that on and actually become a judge and then, moving forward from there. So, bodybuilding is so unique and I was really just kind of, like I said, watching the stream today and in really, I mean, I guess I kind of already knew this, but just really noticing that how if, you can do the same general thing as somebody when you're up there and you're presenting, but just a little slight turn of how, you're trying to show off maybe this particular part that's, that you perceive as being a stronger point for you, whereas somebody else is maybe, angling a little bit different to show their stronger point for them. Like it's just so cool how a singular even pose can be done so differently by everybody that's up there and just all the aspects to where like yes, we can all go to the gym and we can all even have the same workout or eat the same food, but how that's going to translate different for everybody. To me, just like the aspect of all that stuff is so cool how it translates differently into every person.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, being a coach myself and posing coach, I mean, you can really transform a physique by just I mean, minute movement of someone's foot. So, or their hands or their hips. So I can definitely agree with that statement. It's crazy. It's mind blowing what you can do to someone's physique by just, posing.
Mhm. So looking into this upcoming season, I guess now it's officially kicks off, but what are your what are your goals or aspirations or what's kind of the outlook, the plan for the upcoming season?
It's crazy that you asked me that. Well, I had planned out a season with 5 shows, but recently I've been discussing with coach to possibly take this season off and prep at the end of this year to start my season earlier next year of 2025. And the decision of this comes from one, I still need to make some improvements to be more competitive at the pro level. I didn't like my body didn't recover as quickly as it has in the past from prep. And so it took me a little bit longer for my hormones to regulate and for me to put on some body fat to get to a point where I can actually start progressing in the gym. And then it's also the year that my daughter's graduating high school and turning 18, and my son's turning 16, and we're shopping for a truck for him. So just got a lot of big milestones this year happening, and I kind of want to be present for those. So we are discussing possibly taking this season off to improve and focus on family, and then come back stronger and better next year.
Well, best of luck with that. It certainly sounds like either way, it's going to be a very, very busy year and exciting. So, appreciate you coming on the podcast. Best of luck with, whatever plan does take place. And, like I said, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It was great chatting. And if you want to share your socials or anything like that before we head out, you can.
Okay. You can follow me on Instagram at Kasie Rodriguez _ IFBB Pro. And I also have a Facebook page, which is also Kasie Rodriguez. It also has my maiden name in parentheses next to it. And then you can also, I think it does have my Instagram handle as well, like associated with my Facebook page. That way you can follow me that way as well. And then I do have TikTok, which is the same handle as my Instagram, which is Kasie Rodriguez _ IFBB Pro.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.